Conference realignment seems to be back in full swing. Obviously, the news around Florida State and then what Clemson may do next has everyone's attention. But UNC is a case that has been talked about a ton, and it is a program that I think has a lot of value and a lot of folks would desire. But something happened today that may hurt their chances, and unfortunately for the Tar Heels, who are a very attractive brand, may hold them back just a little bit. Let's talk about it and let's share some things that you may not have thought of. Maybe there's a little bit of conspiracy theory here in this video that folks will enjoy, but let's talk about it right now. So what was decided today? The UNC Board of Governors, that is a group that sits over any UNC system school. So it's not North Carolina's, the university per se. It's any University of North Carolina system school, which would include NC State and North Carolina at the Power 5 level. That includes both of those schools. That wants to change an athletic conference will have to get approval from the system president and the board of governors that we mentioned, under a policy change approved by a board committee on Wednesday. What does that mean? Well, it means that unlike Florida State, who basically their board of trustees just said, hey, we want to leave the conference. We're going to sue to do this. And if they win that lawsuit, they get out without penalty. If they had the money, they could certainly just pay the penalty and leave right now. But UNC or NC State in this situation cannot do that. They have to get approval from this board of governors and the president to do so. What does that mean for North Carolina State and UNC? Well, for UNC, who is certainly a more attractive brand, sorry, any Wolfpack fans out there, certainly a more wanted brand by potentially the Big Ten or the SEC, it may handcuff them a little bit. It may hold them back just a little bit, because what this UNC Board of Governors wants is they don't want NC State getting left behind. They don't want North Carolina State to be at a disadvantage. As a public university, the idea of UNC going to the Big Ten or the SEC and getting $30 to $40 million more a year in revenue when they're already making more than NC State in general anyway would not sit well with the powers that be, with the North Carolina school system. What about Duke and Wake Forest? Well, they're private institutions. They have less to do here, right? Like, they can decide what they want to do one way or the other, but Duke and Wake Forest very much want to stay in the ACC. They seriously want the ACC to stay together. And so there's maybe some conspiracy theorists out there that would say, man, they've got a lot of political power. They've got a lot of voting power. There's a lot of bigwigs behind the scenes that went to Duke, went to Wake, went to NC State. And it would benefit those three schools, even though Duke and Wake are not part of the public school system there in North Carolina. It would benefit those schools for UNC and North Carolina State to stay in the ACC. This certainly handicaps UNC. Remember, UNC was one of the three schools who did not want other teams to be added, didn't want Cal, Stanford, SMU to be added to this conference. UNC knows that, like Clemson and Florida State, they have a landing spot. They're an attractive brand. They can get out. I think the University of North Carolina school system knows this too, and knows that UNC could go like that. And so the school system's prerogative is it's twofold. One, they don't want NC State getting left behind. Two, they know that this may help keep the ACC together. UNC not being able to get out due to the rules of not leaving North Carolina State behind could help the ACC stay intact. And who would that benefit? Well, that would benefit a Charlotte-owned business. That would benefit a North Carolina-owned business, which is the Atlantic Coast Conference, which is headquartered there in Charlotte. Don't think for a minute that the ACC is not potentially pulling strings behind all of this, putting political pressure, putting pressure for revenue and everything else on that UNC school system, the Board of Governors, the president there in charge of it, to make sure that this happens. Does it mean that UNC can no longer get out? No, it does not. But both schools, original members in 1953, will probably have to go together now. How does it impact conference realignment in the near future? Well, Florida State, easily your most valuable brand out there. I think that's why they've put their foot forward and said, hey, we got to go. We got to get out. Clemson has been rumored to maybe do something towards the end of this month, maybe the beginning of next month. So they might be second. But now, past Clemson, does this move UNC down a peg? Does maybe Miami become a little bit more attractive because there's nothing tied to them leaving? Miami could get up and go at any time. They could do what they want once Florida State breaks out, once Clemson breaks out, and a path to end the ACC is there. Miami could go at any time. There's no one that would tell them, no, you can't do this, or you have to take your little brother with you. But you think about UNC. UNC is a very attractive brand. Are they worth more than a, let's call it, full share? And this is no shot at any NC State fan. I don't think any NC State fans would argue with me on this, but I don't know that NC State is worth a full share of an SEC revenue model or a Big Ten revenue model. I don't necessarily know that I think NC State was going to get an invite to the Big Ten or the SEC. Will one of those conferences say, hey, we think UNC is valuable enough to where we'll take our losses with NC State and we'll invite them along with them? I think UNC would be worth a full revenue share in either conference. But is the Wolfpack worth it? I don't know. It may get to a point in conference realignment where the Big Ten takes teams like Florida State and Miami and maybe even grabs Clemson as well. And the SEC then has to pivot to, hey, well, we better get North Carolina, and maybe NC State can become a better team for us, maybe a Missouri level ad at some point in the future. And so we'll kind of pay it forward for that. Could NC State also take a lower share, 3/4 or a half share? If they vote on that and they accept it, the Board of Governors would certainly probably approve at that point. But will NC State accept that? Will they take a half share in that conference? Again, how much does this handicap UNC? UNC certainly looks like they're on the verge or on the cusp of doing something if these meetings are happening to kind of handcuff them and kind of lock them down or limit them at this point. But how soon will that be announced? I would conjecture that without this, UNC probably announces this August, when a lot of people speculate that Florida State is going to. We'll see what happens with the Florida State legal battles. We'll see what happens with the lawsuits that both the ACC and Florida State's Board of Trustees have filed against each other. But does this slow things down for UNC? Does this make UNC a less attractive brand because they're going to have to pull NC State along with them? I would have ranked the teams like this: Florida State, then Clemson, then North Carolina, then probably Miami. This may jump Miami ahead of them. And that's no shot at UNC. UNC fans, I think you're a more valuable brand. I think the TV numbers, the revenue numbers, the tickets sold, I think all of that points to UNC being a more valuable brand. There's also the idea of what they bring in basketball, which I know kind of pales in comparison, but it matters. There's merchandise sold. There's everything. UNC is a more attractive brand than Miami. But is UNC plus NC State and how much money that would cost more valuable than Miami by itself? I'm not sure. I think that this is very interesting. Obviously, politics play a big part in our daily lives, and we're in an election year and everything else. And don't think for a minute that the political powers that be, the behind-the-scenes folks at Duke, Wake, the ACC's conference, NC State, don't have a lot of say in this. It's a rough day for UNC. I feel bad for UNC fans and their program because they've invested the way they should into their athletic program. And right now, politicians are kind of getting in the way of them doing what is best for their school. Politicians are getting in the way of them doing what is best for their program. And that's unfortunate. It is the day and age that we live in. Hopefully, a conference will be willing to take on NC State with UNC. Maybe it's in the scenario we outlined with the SEC sort of budging and saying, hey, we'll do it because the Big Ten's jumping us and getting all of these teams. But who knows? Who knows how that goes down? Maybe NC State takes a lower revenue share because they read the writing on the wall. I don't know that they will at this point because they kind of have their get-out-of-jail-free card. Can't imagine a scenario where the Board of Governors will let UNC go and not let NC State go with them. That is what everyone understands this new change in policy to have represented. What are your thoughts? Does this limit you? Are you a UNC fan? Are you just a conference realignment fan? What are your thoughts on the new changes? What are your thoughts on UNC's prospects of getting out Are you an NC State fan? Are you praising God for this right now and thankful that this happened? Probably. Got no problems with it. I get it. How does this end up all coming out in the wash? Let's talk about it down in the comments. Really new channel. I've been doing this for about a week, less than a week now. Going to do a ton of conference realignment talk on here. We did a ton on our main channel, but we're going to take a national approach and try and look at it from every perspective, something that we really couldn't do on other channels and other places. So hit that subscribe button. UNC fans, my heart's going out to you. I want you guys out. I think you should be out. I got a lot of respect for UNC for voting against the 3 teams coming into the conference. So UNC fans, my heart goes out to you. Hit that subscribe button. We'll continue to cover this. And I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. You UNC folks that may be more plugged in to it than I am, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this going down today. Thank you guys for tuning in to College Football Addiction.